So good morning to everyone. I am Leah Sciortino and the founder and director of SEA Junction. SEA Junction is a public venue based in Bangkok, focusing on all kinds of issues related to Southeast Asia. I am glad to be here again with Khin Ohmar, a leading peace activist and woman activist, and much more than this, who is our resource person in this 8 What's Happening in Myanmar bi-weekly updates. As the previous update, the objective is to get an insight from a knowledgeable person about what is happening, what has been happening in the recent weeks, not to lose attention for Myanmar and what is happening in Myanmar. As we know, there are many global issues at the moment. COVID, Afghanistan now is the last global crisis that is happening, but we cannot forget what is happening in Myanmar, as it is indeed a human disgrace. So I give the word to Khin Ohmar for the next 20 minutes, and then, as usual, we'll open the floor for question and answer. Please, Khin Ohmar.
Thanks, Leah. Good morning, everyone. So it's been 2 weeks that I gave the update to those of you who joined last time and those of you who just joined this time. What I will do is first come in and with the updated information of what's happening on the ground. Let me start saying that after 6 months passed, the people of Myanmar are not giving up. They are continuing with their defiance very strongly. Every day there are demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations, and also there are actually the civil disobedience movement. People continue to be defiant against this military junta. So what we can say again is after 6 months passed, the military is not successful with their attempted coup. So this is something that we should again take a note of it. So as of right now, like when I gave you the last time an update that was on August 2, there were at least 945 people were killed. Now, as of August 19th, 1,007 people were killed. So we have basically 62 more people being killed by this junta in the last 2 weeks. Last time I told you 7,026 people were arrested. Now 7,355 people were arrested. So 329 more people were arrested, basically. Among those who were killed, just recently, there was a very tragic event happened. A group of young activists who were, in a place, a hiding place. Their place was found and raided by the police, and then there was something very tragic happened. But people of Myanmar, while they were so sad, they also take it as a source of pride of how the people are so determined, especially the young people, how they are so determined to fight against this military, because the young people actually jumped down from the four-story building because they had a pre-decision if whether they will run to escape. If they could, they will, but if they couldn't, they will actually just commit to this solution that they will not allow themselves to be arrested and taken away by these ruthless murderers. So far, among those 7,000 plus people who were arrested, 5,747 people are still remain in detention. Out of them, 255 have been sentenced in prison, and 26 have been sentenced to death, and 118 been sentenced in absentia. So there is a large number of these 7,000 plus people in the prisons are also not having access to their families' visit. And the ICRC, whose mandate is to protect and assist the political prisoners, for example, are also not having an access to those who are in detention. So it's a very devastating situation now because there are more cases of COVID affected and death in the prisons are being reported now. And there are more than 400 doctors and 180 nurses are among about 2,000 who have been evading the arrest. The arrest warrant being issued against them by the junta, but they are still able to evade the arrest and stay in wherever they are in the hiding place. 190 health workers, doctors, they've been arrested. And also 37 health workers were injured and 25 health workers were killed also in the last 6 months' time. Now let me move to another category or another group of people who are very, very brave is also the journalist. About 95 journalists and media staff have been arrested. 42 of them are still in detention, and 2 were arrested just 3 days ago. And one of my very close, my colleague in this women's rights movement, who is also a co-founder of the media outlet called Nizima, she was arrested in May, and until now she remained in detention. Several jail journalists were released on July 30th as a part of the wider release of about 2,300 people. But when those who were released from the prison, they all talk about the torture. They all talk about beating and threats and other inhumane conditions, including deprivation of food and water and medical care. Now I want to bring your attention to another very serious issue that I want to share with you, a situation, which is the family members of the protesters who are being abducted and taken hostage, and in at least 2 cases sentenced to imprisonment. So far, at least 199 people, 119 people, including an infant of 2-month-old, have been abducted because the security people, the military, couldn't find the people that they want to arrest, who are the protesters, all the supporters of the people's movement. So far, at least 83 remain in detention. And there are 2 cases where the family members are sentenced. One case is the mother of a youth activist. And the other case is wife and 2 daughters of a protest leader. And among the 3 that were arrested, a young girl, 4-year-old, if you can look at my background, you will see her. Suta Wai, she's 4 years old. She was arrested along with her mother and her sister of 17 years old because the police and military combined forces could not find her father, who is a protest leader of the town. Now, already been sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. This little girl was released after 2 months, but she is now traumatized of what she has experienced. There are actually many others. Family members as young as 2 years, family members of the situation that we're facing. And there are also celebrities. More than 100 celebrities have been arrested and detained because they joined the People's Movement for Democracy. And in some cases, those celebrities were arrested because they were threatened that their children will be taken away if they don't come back and surrender themselves. this is another situation that we're facing, because now many of them, like I said, over 5,000, close to 6,000 people, we don't know where they are. There are no lawyers also, because many lawyers have been targeted, and lawyers are among those who've been also arrested and detained. So we don't really have the lawyers enough to be able to take all of these cases. So I think it's a very, very serious situation we're facing. Now this is all about the people's movement. But now I want to bring your attention to another major problems that we're facing. Just last month alone in July, there is a case in one township called Khin, and in central Upper Myanmar. There were 4 massacres happened. The military actually, in that 4 massacres in total, they have killed at least 43 people. And these, when the bodies were found, there were signs of severe torture, cuts and bruises. And you may wonder why these massacres are happening. Because those of you who are familiar or who follow the Burma-Myanmar situation for a long time, the massacre usually took place in the ethnic borderland, where the military launched military attacks against the ethnic minority communities. But now this is happening right in the central and upper Burma. The very reason is, in those areas, these areas are very strong supporter of Aung San Suu Kyi and National League for Democracy, because they are so strong and strong supporter of Aung San Suu Kyi, and they are resilient, that their resistance against this military is also very strong. And that's the very reason that they've been severely targeted. And there are other areas, like in Western Myanmar, in Khin state, where the local Khin community is so strong against the military coup. And they've been targeted severely, even like 2 days ago, over the weekend. They've been targeted with the heavy artillery, artillery shellings and things like that. So pretty much the whole town of more than 50,000 population, almost like at least 2/3 of the population of the town had to run away into the mountain and jungles and forest. And there are no humanitarian aid. So this brings down to my next point on the humanitarian aid. The humanitarian aid situation is very severe, because right now the population that I share with you are in different parts. Now let me bring you another area where the displacement is very high. In the eastern part of Myanmar, as well as in the northern part of Myanmar, the displaced population number already reached well over 250,000. 250,000. And these people are in dire need of humanitarian aid. And also, you know that Myanmar is facing this very severe outbreak of COVID-19 third wave. The health system has been severely, it was already a very poor system before. But now with the coup, it's even more collapsed, because the military has taken, they have been attacking the medical facilities, they have seized the hospitals, but also they are attacking the medical doctors and health workers, you see. So now, all of this in combined, there is no place for people to go to, even with the communicable diseases or ordinary, like pre-existing conditions, or with the COVID, people don't really have a place to go. And especially in the ethnic and remote areas, that's where the severity is far high. And right now, after 3 months of the ASEAN making the decision with the 5-point consensus, as if this is like the roadmap to solve the Myanmar's crisis. The ASEAN has finally appointed the special envoy, who is the foreign minister too of Brunei and Darussalam, Brunei. And it's very frustrating for people of Myanmar, frustrating for me, frustrating for our civil society organizations, is because in the 5 points of the ASEAN consensus, there is a 1 point, is for ASEAN to engage with all the stakeholders. The ASEAN chair and also the ASEAN Secretary General, during their visit to Myanmar in June, they went and just met with the military junta, the leader of the military coup, who is the one who is given all these commands to kill the people on the ground. And yet the ASEAN failed to meet with the people representative government, the National Unity Government, all the ethnic armed organizations, all the other stakeholders of our country. And in fact, for that, the Myanmar civil society collectively came together and even denounced this appointment, because we don't see the ASEAN will be able to meet up to their even, we don't think that they will even be able to meet up to their own promises. And one of the very key points is to stop the violence. For now, ASEAN Special Envoy already talking about the humanitarian aid, even rounding up the fundraising. But we don't hear any of the ASEAN leaders talking about the military to stop the violence. They've been bringing the military or the leader into their meetings as if this military is the people representative of our country, which is not, clearly not. The people in Burma, Myanmar, categorically rejected this military. In fact, they themselves, with their own law, is an illegitimate entity. But the ASEAN is only talking to this military junta, but not to the legitimate representatives of our country. So it's a very challenging for us, especially now with this COVID-19, when the ASEAN want to address the issue of the humanitarian aid catastrophe, COVID-19 and all of this. They must also ensure, first, precondition, the number one precondition is this military to stop the violence. This military to release all of those they must withdraw. Yes, they must all withdraw. They must all retreat. And this is the first precondition. The ASEAN must ensure until they can even talk about the humanitarian aid. And let me just share with you another point with the ASEAN role in this humanitarian aid. There is this, that the plan is for the AJAR Center, the ASEAN Humanitarian Center, to deal with the humanitarian aid in Myanmar. We are very worried because AJAR Center is not equipped for a man-made political happening in our country. They are formed and equipped for the natural disaster management, not for the man-made political crisis and violence. And plus, the governing body of the AJAR Center is involved by the Ministry of Social Welfare of Myanmar, who is under the direct control of the military. And in fact, the military will actually have the say over managing, setting agenda and distribution. So that there is this lack of independence of the AJAR Center. The people of Myanmar don't trust this military. In fact, they are trying to get rid of this military, who actually are killing them. So how can they actually put the trust in AJAR Center when the AJAR Center's humanitarian provision agenda will be managed, controlled by the military junta? So I think that's a very serious situation that ASEAN leaders need to look into, because after all, they lost the trust from our people. And without the trust from the people of Myanmar, how can they even solve the problems of Myanmar? if they only just go in partnership with this murderous military regime. So I think these are the key points that I want to share with you today. There are many humanitarian and COVID crises that people are really trying their best to combat and resolve and address their problems on the ground. The medical doctors, for example, are trying their best, in spite of there are two risks that they face every single day in their work to save the people's life. One is the COVID, and then the other is the military who continue to manhunt them and try to attack and arrest them. And you can imagine how both physically and mentally must be distressful for them to do this work on every single day. But in spite of all of these brute force, they're not giving up. They're doing the best they can to care for each other. So I think this is something that I want to share with you and update you today. Of course, I'm here at your disposal for any questions that you might have. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you very much, Omar, and did a grimy picture of the situation on the ground, as well as the international engagement via ASEAN, and particular via the center, which indeed is not among the most effective organization. But as you say, at the same time, the resilience of the people of Myanmar continue 6 months after, as you say, the attempted coup, not to give it already as something already done. So I open the floor now for any question from the people here or on Facebook. You can raise your hand, or you can write in the chat room. I will take, as usual, about 3 questions and then give Omar an opportunity to reply. Okay, we have actually received a question before the event. What should international organizations such as UN, INGOs, International NGO in Myanmar, be doing, which they aren't, and what are they doing that they should not be doing? I also asked Ati, she's a journalist from Jakarta. Please, Ati.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Khin Ohmar and Leah. I want to ask if any other aid group has managed to get in, like the Red Cross. Thank you.
So,
sorry, the last question I didn't clearly.
Yeah, are there any aid organizations like the Red Cross which has been able to enter any part which needs them very much?
So both
any
this
part
question,
of Burma,
of Myanmar, so both these questions are related to basically to the international community.
Yes, it's related. Yes,
engaged with the situation in Myanmar. So please, Omar.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the question. Just last week of July, we actually sent a letter to the UN Secretary General calling for his leadership to actually dispatch a humanitarian intervention mission, and also to ensure that humanitarian mission is UN-led and UN coordinated. And especially this is actually indirectly linked to combat the COVID outbreak. And we call for that is because it is, first of all, it is the UN its own pledge, because last year with the COVID, the Security Council adopted 2 resolutions to address the COVID outbreak, the COVID-19 pandemic, including calling for the global ceasefire. So we see, like, after, for us knowing of where things are in our country and where the solution is, we know where the solution is. So we know without the UN highest political support backing up the humanitarian or the COVID missions, pro-COVID programs on the ground will fall in trap of the military, in the hands of the military for their political gain. You see, this is the same military who have misused, misappropriated, and politicized and weaponized the international aid, humanitarian aid, not only now, but also in the past. They have done it all along. And they have already been doing that even now as we're speaking. We know that they are also desperately wanting the legitimacy from the international community. Like next month, the UN's General Assembly will have to address the issue of who represents Myanmar. Basically, the military is desperately trying to seek that legitimacy and recognition from the international community. And we know that the humanitarian aid can be actually used for their political gain, because they have been weaponizing the COVID-19 for their own political gain already. Even before the coup, even since last year, they've been doing that already. So we know that without the UN political backup, meaning that the Security Council to come up with the resolution to really dispatch this kind of mission. Of course, ASEAN can join in that, like what they did as a tripartite core group back in 2008 during the Cyclone Nagis. But this can be even much more in the intense nationwide because of the COVID, because of the military coup. So we have been calling for it. I have to say that to our disappointment, until now, we don't see that yet. I mean, everything that we see that UN should be doing, UN could be doing, and UN needs to be doing because of their own mandate, and they are not doing it. And they are still unable to do it because, there is always this excuse saying that, oh, China and Russia will never allow the Security Council to come up with any united position. Well, for us, we know that. The problem is, it's not that we don't know that they will block, but what we need to see is that other governments are also taking a step out of their own, their parameter, and step out to do something, even as a coalition of the willing. If the Security Council doesn't move, they can still try to do something, bypassing the Security Council, because that's what we need. But right now, they're not doing it. So that's with the UN. If you ask me about the UN, what they are doing, and they are not doing what they should be doing. Let me put it that way. And I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed in the Secretary General himself, because he has not shown any strong leadership to deal with this military junta in support of our people on the ground. We haven't seen him. It's always like a statement here and there, which doesn't bring any tangible effect on the ground to stop the violence or save the people's life. Let me come to the end goals. The INGOs. Well, the thing is, the INGOs I can imagine of the dilemma that they must be having at this point.
Yeah.
Right? On one side, you have this military junta who has no legitimacy from the people by all means, and also who are in themselves are the international criminals. So would you actually work with them, have your MOU extend, or would you actually take the side with the people of Myanmar and do something about it? Well, then you have a situation particularly for the INGOs who work on the humanitarian aid, right? Because there is humanitarian neutrality, impartiality. But I've been telling, if you haven't seen, I can send you my op-ed I put out recently. There is nothing neutral working with this military regime. So basically, the neutrality itself will do more harm to our people than do the good. At least in context of Myanmar, I'm not going to talk about the other country situation, but in case of Myanmar, this humanitarian neutrality will actually do more harm than do the good for our people. So that's something that we've been sending the message out as the civil society. I'm not the only one saying that. We have a whole range of civil society organizations on the ground who are doing, including the Humanitarian Aid, are saying all of this risk, that the risk that pose for those Ingos if they will choose to work with a military junta. So, and then your last point on the Red Cross, we have a Myanmar Red Cross, but Myanmar Red Cross always being, of course, the Myanmar Red Cross is more of the national organ, which is the auxiliary, but such kind of body all along under the previous military regime, always been submissive to the military. They take the military above orders from the above. But I have to say that though, the volunteers of the Red Cross, Myanmar Red Cross volunteers on the ground, they've been doing really great job. But it's a problem. The problem is the decision and the top management cannot be independent from the junta. I think that's where the problem is. I'm not so sure I answer your question though, sorry.
So we have some problem. I mean, people are writing in the chat box on my name and I don't know, Lisa's name. I think this is something quite strange. I am not sure how it's being done, but for sure it's not me writing on, I am missing my book club right now. So please take these messages in the chat box. If they are not relevant, they are not from me, and I suspect the one from Lisa Broughton is also not from Lisa, but maybe she can confirm. We have some questions, so we are still going on. Anthony Zola is asking about if ASEAN, what really would take if you still hope ASEAN to act? What is needed? What it will take for ASEAN to really take action in if we still believe that ASEAN can play a role? Then Joanna is making a comment, but maybe she can make it more directly. And she also said the meeting has been hacked, probably. And this is indeed, so I don't know about this hacking, what we can do, but let's continue the discussion about the issue of ASEAN and also the role of INGOs. And now we know that there are some organizations like LIFT, which indeed provide quite a lot of support to NGOs. I think if you know anything about this, I think I would be interested to know how they are operating at the moment, whether they can operate or because they were funding quite a lot of civil society group up to now. The comment from Joanna is NGO are in a bind. Hello? In a bind between donor and partner, even if they are not registered in Myanmar, inflexible funding result is being stuck in not being able to respond to what is actually needed. So we can decide it is better to ask for forgiveness later than permission now, but the risk is losing the donor down the road. So this, I think, also refers to the fact that many organizations are dependent on their donors. So they are international organizations, they are not autonomous. There are further, maybe we start with this and then we continue your reflection on what is being said again on the role of international organization and ASEAN, what can be done to push ASEAN to act.
Sorry, Leah. I am trying to catch up with the questions, but I think I kind of lost. But let me try. Let me start with the ASEAN then. What do we do? What will it take for ASEAN to act? Or I guess it's challenging. I'm kind of given up on ASEAN to some extent, because it's well, I mean, like ASEAN has a quite unique uniqueness of its own coming right now, with a different, like a different political system and different everything, and it's very there is no like the whole like a non-interference policy and all of that, but it's really, there is no real unity, right? I mean, that of course there's need to be no unity, but it's just when it comes to deal with this kind of like magnitude of crisis in the region, it's just that first there is lack of political will, and then there is also, I think, lack of also understanding on how like their neighboring countries is in this deep level. But I think what can we do about this is we have to keep raising our voice to ASEAN and keep try to keep banging their door. That's what we're doing at this point, is like they need to hear directly from us, not through not through any intermediary, but just engage with us, directly hear from us, because after all, these are the crises are in the country where the people are the ones who are being impacted, and they are the one also with the solutions, and they are the one also with the agency to bring about the change and solve the problems. So I think it is so important, because there is this like the way how the international community, some of the international community, also when it comes to like look at the situation on the ground, people on the ground are never given a chance to be a part of. Their voices are never heard. Their concerns were never really like considered and addressed. So I think that's been a major problem. So we need to get ASEAN to listen to the people. And that goes the same thing to the INGOs and other UN agencies as well. Because I mean, UN has failed Myanmar since 4 years ago. We are about to commemorate the fourth year remembrance of the genocide against the Rohingya next week. And UN completely failed, in spite of all the early warning signs on the ground, in spite of all of the technicality and expertise in the UN system. And yet UN failed. UN failed the Rohingya people 4 years ago. But now the question comes is, will UN fail again the whole country, the whole people of Myanmar? I think ASEAN being a part of that, I think it's so important that ASEAN don't actually allow that happen, because it's right in their backyard. If Myanmar become a complete failed state with this nationwide across country civil war, the thing is, it is already leading there. So how are they going to address unless they really talk to the people? So I think we need your help also. If you are from the region, if you are from the media community, please help us amplify the voices of the Myanmar people from the ground. Please help us for the ASEAN leaders to hear from us what the people really want them to do. So I think that's something I want to say. And I know, Lisa, there is a big question. I'm not so sure. Would you help me again, please?
Well, I was elaborating on a comment that was being given, actually, that basically even the international organization are reporting to their donors, and sometimes the donor may not be willing to do certain things, and the international organization also have to look not to lose the funding, then they don't know how to behave. My question more specifically that I added was about lift funds, because they are providing a lot of support to organization in Myanmar. They were providing, I don't know if they are still able to operate. So beside the Red Cross, which are more humanitarian kind of organization, what about the development-oriented organization?
I see. I would not say anything on the lift because our organization, we don't receive any support from them. We just only know about them. So I don't think I can say anything on that. But I can just share in general about where the donor dynamics that of the development donors. I mean, like many of our partners, local community organizations or civil society organizations, in the past 6 months, because the military, also one of their main target, they target the medical workers and journalists, but also they target the civil society actors, the civil society organizations. Of course, for the past many years, for the last decade, they already got a lot of information in their hand. Like they know exactly where our civil society organizations offices are, like how we operate, what we do, what are our programs. So they've been already, sounding out, mapping out. So it's easy for them to target up, with this coup. And also they have a more advanced on IT, and also the surveillance like that. So it's even much more dangerous for everybody, really. But of course, when it comes to the civil society actors, the problem is many of the, especially the independent human rights activists or the rights-based organizations or the networks or the human rights defenders groups who are doing this very important human rights work, which is critical to the government, which of course is not being given favor by the government. So they are not even registered. Many of them cannot be registered. So some of the donors are able to support them, but some are not because they don't have that registration status. But now with the military coup, what is even worse is this military is actually chasing down on, which organization, what funding that they get from where, all of this, right? So now many of the independent civil society and community-based organizations has had to go very low-key now. And I'm not so sure how the donors are at this point, but many of our partners are having some difficulty because the adjustment of their programs, due to the military coup, it's I mean, pretty much they lost everything. I mean, they lost their office, they lost their, they cannot operate in their office anymore. Their programs cannot be implemented anymore. So I think some of them were having a lot of challenges, but also many, we find some donors are very flexible. They really see how the people of Myanmar are really trying so hard, giving up everything to bring back the democracy. So they are very supportive too. Yeah.
So we have 2 more questions, and sorry again to everyone for the hackers, but it's the first time it's happening to us, so it means we are becoming more important, I suppose, if someone is trying to sabotage us. So the 2 questions are from Stefan. What is done internationally to block a foreign company bringing revenue to the junta, and what can be done more? I hear you Omar, saying that ASEAN leaders say nothing to stop the violence, but is there any underneath efforts, anything that relate to human security, which maybe is not done publicly, but is done beyond the scene, or they're really doing nothing? Do you know of any action that may not be in the news, but still they are acting?
Well, let me start with that, Leah. If they were doing that, they don't inform the people of Myanmar, of course, then we want to know. But according to the public information that we are able to gather according to the what we can gather from within the region. We don't hear anything like that is happening. I mean, of course, nobody will know what has been discussed in the meeting unless the relevant actors will actually disclose it. But I think, you know, what has been done or not done, we can read it from the actions on the ground. If the special envoy or the chair of the ASEAN will speak to the national unity government, for example, or speak to the other relevant stakeholders and hold a meeting with the civil society and exchange the views, and where they can also, you know, like hear different options and alternatives to the solution, they will benefit a lot for their mandate to be successful. The work the mission that they plan to set out with those 5-point consensus. But we haven't, see, the thing is, we haven't seen anything. I mean, it's 3 months past, we haven't seen anything. So I think it's fair for us to say, because we don't see it, because we don't see that, you know, like happening. Coming back to the question on the foreign companies, yes, we have been doing a lot of things. Like we, as you know, like those who are a part of this movement to you know, to bring the democracy back, topple this military junta. We know that the financial flow from the foreign companies is one of the cut that we need to ensure, because this money flow will actually further consolidate the military power, embolden the military to do what they're doing, that they don't have to, you know, they don't have to care about what the UN or what the international community will talk about. And, you know, if they continue to have all of this money in their hand. And especially that what we don't want is, you know, we don't want the international companies also, you know, like we don't want them to also sell, like, you know, and arms and ammunitions. But we don't want them to sell the technology that can be, you know, used against the people. So there are all of these like killing, you know, like things that will kill the people, and these are the things we don't want. So we've been doing advocacy, including to the private sector, like like oil and gas companies like Chevron and Total, you know, POSCO from Korea, or Adani, many of these Kirin Bia, you know, or many of these companies that the money goes into the military hand. We've been calling for the targeted sanctions. We've been also calling for the divestment by these key corporations whose large amount of money are flowing into the military. But we are very careful in our calculation, because everything that the punitive action that we want against the military, we want to also ensure nothing is impacted on the ordinary people. So we've been very careful in calculation of our targeted sanction against them. So there are two military conglomerates that like they call them Myanmar Economic Corporation and Myanmar Economic Holding Limited. And these two we have been targeting. And now the US, EU, and the UK already imposed sanctions against them. We also call for the sanction against the military associated business cronies, and also the family members of the military, the top military officials individually, as well as their family members. And some of those things are already happening. There are like US, UK, and EU in particular. They have taken measures already by sanctioning the business entities, enterprises, as well as the individuals right now. But we know this is not enough yet. So now we are calling for, including the US and UK and EU, to even go further by targeting the military controlled banks military control trade and foreign investment banks, as well as the state-owned enterprises of the oil and gas state-owned enterprise, because that's where the largest money is.
Okay, so are there any other question from the people in the chat, in the Zoom? If anyone wants to raise the hand, we don't accept any more question in the chat room, so you have to raise your hand. If not, I will do a final question about what you envision as the most important development in the next week. I think there is the whole issue of recognition of the NUG or Myanmar, how it's going to play out in the UN. But are there other issues that you think will come up in the next?
So like next week, we will be holding commemoration events in remembrance of the genocide, Rohingya genocide. So please join us. There will be a lot of events that we will be posting, that you can join, like a seminar on the sexual violence, for example, where the Rohingya women will be joined by the other ethnic women from Burma, Myanmar, like the Kachin and Karen, and so we will be again informing you and sharing with the world of these different issues. But mainly the next week event is also really to call on the world leaders to actually act on the case of the genocide against the Rohingya, how to address the justice. We are calling on the international governments to join the Gambia at the International Court of Justice. We are also calling on the governments to push the Security Council to refer Myanmar's situation to the ICC, because unless we hold this military to account, unless we actually bring the perpetrators to the justice for the victims and survivors, we won't be able to move forward. Our country the people are deeply wounded. It's not only the Rohingya, but now you see the whole country. The crimes against humanity and war crimes this military continue to commit until as we speak. So we really need to address this. The National Unity Government, we have, as a civil society, Myanmar civil society, human rights activists, we have called on the National Unity Government to sign the Rome Statute. So for now, the National Unity Government has already taken steps working towards to address the justice and accountability for the Rohingya and also for the others. So they have already taken up the step to give to ask for the International Criminal Court to look into to address the crimes starting from 2002, for example. So I think this is some of the positive steps are already moving, and we would like for you to also monitoring, keep following on these developments, and lend your support. Next month in 2 months of the time, like I said, General Assembly will have to also discuss who actually represents Myanmar in the United Nations. The current ambassador who took the side with the people, who is now the ambassador of the National Unity Government, and he is the person the people of Myanmar recognize as their representative at the United Nations. There is a public campaign going on. Many more campaigns will be coming in support of that. So there are a lot of including petitions. So we hope that some of you will also those who are willing to join us in these efforts, please do join us and give us your solidarity. Thank you.
Okay, so indeed there are very important event. You mentioned two, to look out for the anniversary and recognition of the genocide of the Rohingya, indeed a tragic, inhuman event, which still has many consequences, as many Rohingya are still in camps in Bangladesh, as well as within the country. And as you were telling me before this event, there was the government has decided also not to provide vaccine to the Rohingya population in Myanmar. So clearly the genocide against the Rohingya continue, although in a different shape. It's not a resolved issue. And the second event is the recognition of the NUG as the government, in this case by recognizing the ambassador, its ambassador at the United Nations. So both are very important events in which we all can contribute by, even if in a minor way, by signing petition and calls for this kind of action and being engaged with the movement, and particularly not to forget Myanmar in a period where now Afghanistan is going to get is getting already a lot of attention in the media. And as we say, we for sure, we don't want that what people of Myanmar to be forgotten. So in 2 weeks, we will be again here with Khin Ohmar to do again an evaluation or an assessment of what is happening, and hopefully there will be some hopeful news among a critical, with what we know remains a very critical situation. Once more, my excuses for what is happening. This hacking was never happened before. Luckily, the comments were not pornographic or anything like that, but for sure we will have to increase our security in for the next event. So looking forward to having you again. Thank you, Khin Ohmar, for spending your night time with us, and see you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye. Sawadee ka.
Thanks, Leah. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.